All right, let's talk about this movie, A House of a Thousand Corpses. Came out back in 2003. It takes place in 1977, but here we go. So we got this dude lives out in the middle of the sticks. His name is Captain Spaulding. He's dressed like a clown. He's running two different occupations. One is like this haunted house, but it's right next to his gas station. And he talks about selling the best fried chicken. So he's talking to this old guy about these performances or whatever like that. And all of a sudden, these two random dudes try to stick up the place. But they got caught off guard because another dude came in, swiped that one, and then they banged off another. He said, "You ain't get the cheap shot on me." They ended both of them niggas. So you got these four people driving on the road. Two guys named Jerry and Bill and their girlfriends, Mary and Denise. They running low on gas. They end up stopping at Captain Spaulding's gas station. And Jerry's so enamored with everything that's going on in here. It looks like a bunch of death and mayhem. But they're supposed to be quote unquote props. Because like I said, he runs this crazy ass carnival. So they want to take a tour through his haunted house, right? And there's all these mannequins or so-called mannequins of people that have like died over the years. But all these people were like sadists, cannibals and whatnot. And of course the guys just think it's all part of the tour, right? So there's one part of the tour, Jerry talks to the guy and he's talking about looking for this tree. Supposed to be some type of tree where people was getting murked at back in the day. Now Captain Spaulding really doesn't want to give him the address, but he's asking him and tempting him, whatever like that. Bottom line is he ends up giving the address anyway. So while this is going on, Denise ends up calling her dad because they're supposed to be getting into this town. And they're supposed to get there before Halloween. By the way, it's the day before Halloween right now. So you got a movie called House of a Thousand Corpses the day before Halloween. You know that shit ain't going to be good anyway. Nevertheless, they get the gas, they about to be on their way. And he ends up giving them some chicken for free on top of that. So they head throughout this town, and all of a sudden we get this news report about 5 missing cheerleaders. Apparently they ain't been seen in like the last couple of weeks. So while they're driving, this one girl named Mindy is sitting outside. They're like, oh, we got to pick up this hitchhiker because it's like pouring down, raining and stuff. They pick her up. Turns out this so-called tree they're looking for is around the corner from her house. So Jerry's like, man, let's just drop her off. You know what I'm saying? Make sure to do what he do. Now the crazy thing is while they're driving, you see somebody in the bushes with a shotgun. He ends up banging out one of the tires. But they ain't see him, so obviously they thought it was just a flat tire. Now Jerry, for some apparent reason, forgot to replace the back tire and put it back in the trunk. I'm like, seems highly convenient, right? He tells him is like, oh man, well guess what? We're almost pretty much at the house. My brother can help you, you know what I'm saying? He's got a tow truck. Brother goes by the name of RJ. So Mindy brings Bill inside of the house, you know, the other ones are waiting in the car. And he's like, well, we don't want to get everybody wet, you know what I'm saying? Like they should be worried about that shit. But anyway, Mindy ends up bringing Bill in the house, getting him some hot chocolate, but really she's trying to flirt with him and shit. RJ comes around, attaches the car to them, and brings it to the house. Now everybody's in the house. Then all of a sudden her mother, Cindy, comes downstairs. And she tells them there's actually a couple people in the house. Now, apparently Jerry was looking for this dude by the name of Dr. Satan because he's just curious about the world and whatnot, right? So Denise wants to make a phone call, but, you know, coincidentally, they don't have no phones. Cindy and Mindy don't use phones like that. Really. That should have been a freaking red flag right there. So they're trying to get everybody comfortable, telling them, like, why don't you just stay for dinner or whatnot? Because it's going to be a couple of hours before, RJ can get a tire or whatever like that to fix their car. Then we get this scene with this dude by the name of Otis. We see he's got these chicks tied up in his room. And we're like, oh, these are the missing cheerleaders. So we don't really know where he's at right now. We just see him in the room and he's talking all this satanic worship and crap, doing experiments and whatnot. So now everybody's sitting at the table for dinner and unexplicitly, there's a lot of freaking candles in the middle of the goddamn table. I'm like, now I think about it, there was a lot of candles lit up in the entire house. No, like seriously, it was an overabundance of candles. You could see at the table had like 50 fucking lit candles sitting in the middle of it. I'm like, why? So this dude by the name of Tiny comes downstairs. His story? Turns out his father tried to burn down the house one day. He got caught in the basement and got a bunch of degree burns. So that's why he comes downstairs wearing a mask. Then this old man, his uncle, comes down the stairs. And then last but not least, fucking Otis comes downstairs. So we're like, oh shit, the room he was in is inside that house. So right at the back, we're thinking to ourselves, these couples are fucked. So they start eating. You don't even know what the hell they're eating actually. Kind of reminds me of Texas Chainsaw Massacre without the chainsaw. So anyway, after they eat, one of the other daughters comes down and does a show, entertainment. She starts singing like Betty Boop songs and shit. She gets close to everybody singing, and then she gets too close to Bill. She sits in his lap, and Mary ain't having that shit. She's like, hey, get off my man's yo if I smack fire out you. So right when they about to start the beef, all of a sudden RJ pops up and is like, yeah, your car's ready. So they get in the car, they about to dip, and then all of a sudden, you see these scarecrow-like figures all of a sudden start moving. They about to drive, and all of a sudden they gotta stop so they can open the gate. Bill gets out to open the gate, all of a sudden he gets bashed in his head with a pipe. They pretty much duff out both of the guys, the girls all scared, and they pretty much destroy the car. Now I'm thinking to myself, if they was going to duff these people out anyway, what was the point in even trying to repair the car? I guess you could say stalling for time maybe, but I mean they pretty much had them the moment they were in the house. And of course behind the mask of one of the people that was beating them up, Otis. So anyway, they pretty much got everybody tied up. First person you see is Mary, she's all tied up talking to Otis. Find out Bill got done dirty. They pretty much turned his organs into like fish parts. He's like done deal dead as shit. Then we see Jerry tied up, and then Cindy comes in there and starts messing with him. Then she ends up scalping like a piece of his head. I'm like, damn. Then we see Denise tied up in a bed. Who knows what part of the house she's in. Tiny's over there watching after her. So she's like, please let me go. And then Tiny starts untying her. It was like, okay. As soon as she's about to leave out, Otis comes downstairs and locks her in a little basement part. He's like, Tiny, what the fuck you doing? Tiny just looks at him like. So while all this is going down, Denise's dad is worried because he hadn't been seen since like the very next day. So he calls up the sheriff to try to figure out what the heck is going on. So he tells the sheriff something about them going to Spalding. So they go to Spalding's spot. Spalding talking all this craziness, but bottom line is he does give them the directions of where they could have been. Next, the police find the cars all smashed up and shit. They end up finding the keys in the car, so they get to the keys and they open up the trunk. They end up finding one of the cheerleaders in the trunk, done deal daddy shit, with the words carved in the legs, Treewell or something like that. So they finally end up finding the house. Mindy ends up greeting one of the cops at the door, while the other cop and Denise's dad are going around the back. The sheriff and Mindy are sitting at this table. He's trying to figure out where's this girl at, blah, blah, blah. While the other cop and the Dawn are going to like the back windows and stuff. They can't find nothing. They end up breaking up the shed. And they end up finding Mary in the shed. They're all like tied up and a bunch of cheerleaders in there dead as shit. Mary's tied up in chains down to her underwear or whatever like that. So the one sheriff gets on the walkie-talkie, tries to tell the other sheriff, but when he turns around, Mindy is pulled out a gun, banging off on him. He's done deal dead as shit. Denise's dad, Dawn, ends up getting hit with a shotgun shot back at his back. He's done deal. The other cop turns around, he sees Otis. But it's only one-on-one. Both of them are standing there with the gun. This nigga, the fucking cop drops the gun. I'm like, dude, you know you're dead. They're killing cops. At least give yourself a chance to fight back. If you die, you die. But still, you know what I'm saying? He ends up getting on his knees on the ground and Otis finishes his ass off. Done deal. Bow. Goofy ass. Yeah, so at this point, there ain't nobody else left to save our four heroes. Well, three now. Because Bill got done dealed early. Which is kind of crazy because Bill seemed like the most calm, cool, collected out of the four. It was just like, usually those are the type of people that last to the end, but apparently he got done deal first. So there you go. And then it was nighttime and they had all the other three dressed up in bunny costumes. And they basically about to take her to this spot so they could just bury these niggas. Somehow Mary ends up getting away, but they know she ain't going nowhere. She was running through this graveyard. She ends up slipping and falling. Classic. Mindy ends up catching up to her and stabbing her done deal to death. You already know what time it is. Mary dead as shit. So they end up putting Jerry and Denise in this coffin. You think to yourself, they just gonna bury these niggas alive. Turns out they just dropped them down into this like lower cave with water or whatever like that. Then all of a sudden the box breaks and a bunch of these little random demons start coming out of nowhere. They end up snatching up Jerry. But then they leave Denise alone. I'm like, why didn't just take Denise too? Like, what the fuck? It was a bunch of them niggas too. So then Denise is wandering around this like dark cave trying to find Jerry or whatever like that. Then one of the dudes gets in her face and then another dude comes out of nowhere and they're like, what the heck is going on? They basically rip off her bunny costume and then they just leave her. And I'm like, what's the deal? We know a lot of these dudes is cannibals. So I'm like, are they just playing with their food right now? They know she can't get out. Like, what's the deal? Then she ends up wandering further into this cave and goes through these doors. And these doors, it looks like this random house that's underground. Dare I say that's the house of 1,000 corpses? It is. So then she's wandering around these rooms or whatever like that. And you got these dudes that are just sitting there. They got like metal attachments and all types of shit on their head. Clearly these are people that have been experimenting on. She ends up getting to this one spot. She sees Jerry and he's like strapped to this thing or whatever like that. And they've been digging through him and all that stuff. So obviously we knew right off the back Jerry was done deal dead as shit. And then this big dude comes out of nowhere with an axe looking like Nemesis from Resident Evil 3. He starts chasing. Well, he doesn't really chases her. It's like he's pretty much just following her, about to cut her with his axe. He ends up slicing the door, missing her or whatever like that. So she starts escaping back through the cave part, but pretty much there's nowhere to get out. Dude catches up to her again, takes another swipe and misses, and like all this plywood and freaking boulders start falling down and shit, ends up falling on him. And then she's like hurt bad, but she's all off in the corner. There's one part I forgot to mention. Before they buried everybody, they had all three of them tied up in the house, right? And the dude, Otis, was wearing Denise's dad's skin. Not only his face, but his whole torso, too. Now, you can't tell me you weren't thinking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre hearing that shit, right? Only problem is, nobody with a chainsaw. Or no dad that was trying to imitate the police either. But other than that, yeah. So anyway, back to Denise. Crazy thing, next morning comes up. She ends up waking up or whatever. Don't even ask me how she climbed out of that fucking hole. There's a bunch of plywood and boulders and things of that nature, but not enough to make yourself a whole goddamn getaway when you couldn't climb up there first before all that took place. And climb out the damn hole and be like, oh my god, Denise escaped, hooray. Come on now. So all of a sudden she gets to the main road, a car pulls up, a red Corvette or whatever, and she gets in the car thinking she get it away. Turns out the guy that was driving the car was Captain Spaulding, yo. But if you thought he was innocent in all this, guess what? He's not. Because who else pops out the backseat? Freaking Otis. Now let me ask you a legit question. Did Captain Spaulding knew that all this was going to take place? She was just going to happen to like, they were just going to happen to like not take away or take after her or something like that. And all this stuff was about to come down and she was going to actually dig herself out of the hole. You just happened to be riding past that same morning. And Otis just happens to be in the back seat, like, really? Maybe she was dreaming that last part, who knows? Next thing we know, she wakes up in one of those laboratory chairs about to get done deal and death. And basically that's the end. See, I remember this movie when it first came out. Now, back then, the thought of it horrified me. You know what I'm saying? I've seen a lot of things nowadays. Now that I look back at it, I'm just like, eh. I mean, the thought process behind it was fucking sick, but still. But I understand if you try to show this to, like, I don't know, maybe a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old, whatever like that, they'd probably be fucking horrified. Was it based on a true story? I mean, it doesn't seem that far-fetched. Bottom line is, House of a Thousand Corpses. If you check it out, check it out.